Union is closing in on a long-awaited free trade agreement with India. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has signalled at the World Economic Forum in Davos, hinting at what could become one of the most consequential trade breakthroughs for both economies in years. In a section of her speech focused on the EU's drive to diversify, she said there is still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Some call it the mother of all deals, one that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP, by linking one of the world's fastest growing major economies with a bloc that remains a central pillar of global trade. The deal would reshape supply chain flows at a time when governments are rethinking their economic dependencies. Let's in fact listen into what she said.
But we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP.
Mithali Nikore is joining us for more details on this story. Mithali, this is going to be a big breakthrough when, of course, the deal is finally signed and announced. How close are we to this deal? Do you believe it could perhaps be signed on this visit by the EU president, or perhaps the next one?
So I think, Uday, first of all, I would like to really welcome the announcement that is happening around this deal from, no one higher than Ursula von der Leyen herself. Because if you think about it, the way the EU has approached this deal has been extremely pragmatic. When they understood that agriculture was a no-go area for India, they said, that's fine, let's put agriculture off the table. We can come back to it in the future after we've seen how we work on manufacturing and services. I mean, that is the most pragmatic approach that any, Western bloc has taken with Indian agriculture, because it is well appreciated and understood that, the livelihoods of so many million people, nearly 500 to 600 million people in India's agriculture, depends on this sector and depends on a sector which is not that modern. And India can benefit so much from this deal, so can the EU, because when we look at supply chains across the manufacturing spectrum and also the technology spectrum and financial services, integrating the two, great civilizations of India and Europe together can really bring economic benefits to both the regions.
All right, Mithali, stay with us. In fact, I want to quickly just apprise for our viewers what the contours of this trade agreement are going to be, what really this deal could look like. What do we know so far? What are the details that we have? Let's quickly break it down for our viewers now. The India-EU FTA. Let's please go to the top of the slide. Let's go to the first one. The India-EU FTA. So the bilateral trade in goods between India and the EU has already reached $135 billion in the financial year of 2024. That is where things stand as of now. This deal is, of course, aiming to create a market of 2 billion people, covering 25% of global GDP. That is what this trade deal is setting out to do. Negotiators have fully closed 20 out of total 24 chapters in the talk. So it's been a mammoth exercise. A total of 24 chapters in the final talks. 20 out of those 24 chapters have already been closed by negotiators. That means obviously we are close to the final agreement. Remaining chapters include sensitive areas like tariffs, also market access and regulatory alignments. These are the sticking points, the chapters that of course are left, the final modalities that are left before the agreement is full and final and binding in nature. Agriculture sector right now is largely been kept off the table to protect domestic interests. So once again, agriculture sector has decided not to be included in this deal. That's something that India has done to protect our domestic interests of our farmers. The EU is seeking lower tariffs, of course, on automobiles, also on wines, on spirits, and on industrial products from India as well. So that's what is being sought by the European Union. India, of course, is aiming for phased tariff cuts. India is also aiming for safeguarding and improvised access for the services sector as well. So that is what all is being sought by India. EU carbon border adjustment mechanism has now been applied, in fact, to the Indian steel, aluminium and cement sector already from January 2026. So that is something that has already kicked in from the start of this new year for these three key sectors of India. Deal will be boosting Indian exports when it happens, of course, in textiles, also leather, marine products and pharmaceuticals as well. All of this will be helped significantly by this agreement. Now, the EU, meanwhile, will gain easier access to Indian market for their high-tech goods, also for their automobile sector. So that's what is on the table, of course, for the EU. That is what the EU is hoping will happen after this deal is signed. Separate agreements on investment protection and also on geographical indications are being negotiated as well alongside the FTA. So these are certain other aspects that are also being negotiated parallelly, concurrently with that free trade agreement. Meanwhile, if we tell you more about this free trade agreement, well, it is also aiming to reshape global supply chains. Remember, amidst rising trade uncertainties worldwide, the entire geopolitical uncertainty, supply chains are getting shifted. We've seen trade wars break out. We've, of course, seen proper wars also break out. Because of that, of course, this is aiming to restabilize global supply chains, given, of course, the big two blocks involved in this deal. Conclusion of negotiations are expected to be announced perhaps at that India-US summit, which is scheduled for the 27th of January 2026, a day after Republic Day 2026. So it could be final perhaps before the end of this month itself. And the signing of that FTA, of course, is anticipated soon after the January 27th summit announcement. So will it happen on that day? Will it happen soon after? That is something, of course, we'll get to know perhaps next week, but we are inching very, very close to the final agreement. Mithali Nikore, what are the sticking points that remain, and what is the uniqueness of this deal for both India and for the European Union? What makes this such a big game changer?
So thanks, Uday. So I think for the game changer part first, because that's the more fun part. I think the first area that is becoming very, very critical for both countries to cooperate on is digitization and technology. So of course, you know, when you're talking about an agreement like this, there is a lot of work that goes into trade in goods. But trade and services is actually one of the areas that this deal really prioritizes and, you know, focuses on increasing the linkages between technology firms in India, IT service firms in India, and, you know, the tech innovators in the EU. So working together, they can actually scale up a lot of the technology solutions that, you know, are being developed across both continents. And then, of course, we have, as India, the capacity and the number of people who can actually provide, you know, technology as a service to so many other countries as well. So I think technology is really one area of cooperation. The second area of cooperation is going to be renewables and renewable energy, because even in renewable energy, there is a lot of innovation that is going on in the EU. And the Indian market remains, you know, in need of these renewable energy solutions. But also, you need to have, again, the manufacturing of a lot of equipment for renewable energy, which can actually take place in India. And the third area, which, you know, we're seeing, which is very, very different this time, is really around financial services. And financial services, you know, previously have not been emphasized and spotlighted so much. But in this deal, it is being discussed that financial services and services in general are going to be, you know, having a pride of place when the two continents are working together. Tourism is again an area where, you know, huge amount of cooperation is being sought, and Europe is actually looking forward to having more and more Indian tourists actually visit Europe and enjoy the hospitality of Europe. When we look at the sticking points, definitely I would say that regulatory standards are always a sticking point with the EU. There are certain green regulations and carbon, you know, stipulations that have to be followed. I mean, these are already implemented, as you said, in the steel, aluminium, and cement sectors. in a way, this is also good for India because we also need to revise our domestic standards to some extent to comply with the European standards, which are considered a gold standard when it comes to green regulations. So I would say that green regulations and food safety standards are the two areas which are typical sticking points. But since agriculture is out of this deal, the green standards are the main ones where India would have to do a little bit of work in order to meet that compliance.
Right. Mithali, once again now to the finalizing of it. Do you expect it on the 27th of January to be at least announced that the end of negotiations has been reached? Could we then see the signing soon after that?
We should really culminate in an announcement around Republic Day. And I think the EU has also been fast tracking a lot of their free trade agreements. They literally just announced a free trade agreement with a Latin American bloc just last week. And that particular trade deal had actually been in negotiation for 20 years. Which they concluded last week. So I think the EU has been on a fast track with its trade deals because it realizes that we are all living in a very uncertain geopolitical environment. They don't know what the future of their relationship with the US is going to be. They don't know what the future of their relationship even with the UK is going to be. So I think it's very much in their interest to conclude this deal in an expedited fashion and go ahead and if it all goes well, then hopefully 27th should be the auspicious day for this deal to be at least announced.
Appreciate you joining us, Mithali, with your perspective. All right.